Welcome to our first road trip and the amazing trip that we had.
All the shenanigans.
The shenanigans that were pulled mostly by the RV.
Yes.
So our plan was to wake up at 5 a.m. on Friday morning.
We did not do that.
We did not. To leave Albuquerque by 6 a.m.
Did not do that.
And then to arrive at Navajo Lake at 10 a.m. We definitely did not do that.
Totally made it at 10 a.m.
Just pulled out of the neighborhood. How do you feel?
I'm excited. Here we go. Maiden voyage.
The kids are excited too.
In their beds.
By 10:30, we were supposed to be on the boat and having lunch and relaxing until Monday, where we were going to drive home. And that's not quite what happened.
So one of the things we didn't check on it was the coolant level, which it seems to be okay, but I mean it's definitely an old vehicle and it's running hot. So we pulled over in San Isidro just to get some extra coolant, some distilled water for just in case. We'll let it take it easy a little bit now, not push it so hard. I think that going 65 on the highway just was a bit much for this 1978 beast. Not quite. So we left Albuquerque okay.
Yeah.
Got out of here at a decent time. We slept in and allowed ourselves some stretching room, and
It's good that we did. We needed the energy and focus.
Definitely. So we ended up leaving Albuquerque at 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And right about 8 a.m. as we got into San Isidro, well before that, I started noticing that the gauge on the engine was getting hot. And so I just took it easy going into San Isidro, where I noticed that we were low on water and that we had a leak after we put water in it. And so we had a crossroads.
Right. We had the discussion of turning around and driving 32 minutes back to Bernalillo, or continuing on north, going up to Cuba, New Mexico. And
where we were gonna stop and buy some hoses, because I thought it was for sure that it was a water hose leak or a radiator hose leak, and I'd just buy hoses in Cuba and fix it. We got to Cuba,
yep,
which is what we decided to do. Go ahead and just buy some water, fill it up, and chance it to
Cuba.
Cuba.
We sure did make that decision.
I made that decision, and it worked. We made it to Cuba.
We did make it to Cuba.
But when we got there, nobody had hoses. They
barely had screwdrivers.
Right. So we bought more water and breakfast.
Yes.
Drove to the Apache reservation.
Right. So I'm going to guess that we topped out at 40 miles per hour, maybe. I don't know if you ever pushed it more than that. I
stuck to about 45.
45. We would drive 30 minutes, pull over to the side of the road, wait 15 minutes for everything to cool down, and then we'd add water, and then we'd go again.
Right. So we had to keep stopping to not only let the engine cool down and fill up with water, but to stop and buy more water, because I didn't realize how bad the leak was. We decided we were going to go ahead and fix it at the lake. And so that's what we did. We drove to Bloomfield, I bought a water pump, I bought hoses, I bought more coolant, and we pushed it on through to Navajo Lake. We did make it to the lake around 4 p.m. So our 10:30 a.m. Plan to go to be at the lake, it was totally shot. It ended up being a really long drive.
We joke that we made a 4-hour drive into an 8-hour drive, and it was an adventure.
Definitely an adventure. So we got to the lake. We just parked and met our friends, the Jaramillos, at the docks, and we went out on the lake. It was just time to relax and get it off our minds, that whole being out on the road, especially the kids. They were dying. It was not a fun time for them.
So for the last 8 hours, they'd been stuck in an RV with no air conditioning, pulling over to the side of the road and sitting in the hot, in the heat for, an hour while we would let it cool down and restart and go again.
Right.
So we were all pretty cranky and just glad to be done with it. So we parked and didn't even park in our campsite. We just parked in the parking lot and then ran to the water.
Right. And so we got onto the lake. We did that, and that afternoon after we got off the lake is when I went back to the RV, parked it at our site, and took the front end apart and replaced the water pump, replaced the hoses, and that went really well. I did that in about an hour. It was not that big of a job.
He said that he really enjoyed it, that everything came apart and went back together really easily in one of those old classic cars without all the new fancy components.
Right. Well, I always thought that vans were going to be harder to work on because you don't have a whole lot of space to work. But on this, I just took off the whole front end and took off the grill, removed the radiator because I was going to replace hoses anyway, so just took everything apart, pulled the fan off, the shroud, and got straight to the water pump and was able to change it all out, like I said, in about an hour, put everything back together, and it was fine until I filled it back up with water and started it, and that's when we noticed that we had a head gasket leak. Yeah. There was water coming out of the exhaust pipes and it was just pouring out. So we stopped the engine, figured it was kind of it is what it was, and that we were going to try to go back into Bloomfield to either get a head gasket or just some stop leak and chance that. And so we just relaxed on Saturday. Saturday we went out on the boat, relaxed, when the kids were able to swim in the lake and just be in the boat, and then at the end of the day go and hang out at the campfire and do s'mores and all that fun stuff. Then we decided to go into Bloomfield on Sunday, get our supplies, buy the stop leak, and go back to the campsite and perform the stop leak. And it worked. Did that. It stopped the leak.
It was kind of amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, he poured it in and then he ran it for 20 minutes.
Let it cool back down.
Right.
And then had to drive it around at 1200 RPMs for it to work. So if you follow the instructions, the stuff works. And but after that, we had a fuel leak.
Immediately after that, it was just bizarre. It stopped the leak, and he stopped the RV and said, "Look under and make sure that it's not leaking." And I was watching, and he started it back up, and there was no leak, and then bam, there was. But this time, it wasn't oil, and it wasn't water, and it wasn't antifreeze. It was gas.
It was gasoline. Luckily, when I looked under there, it was just right at the fuel filter, and it was just where the end of the hose had gotten frayed, and was able to cut it back shorter and just reclamp it back on. There was a couple of things that we tried. I tried a couple of other hoses that we had, and they weren't gonna work. And so luckily I was able to cut it and refit the original hose back on there, and it worked fine.
Right. All in all, I think it was a fun trip. It was a stressful trip, and then it was fun again.
Right.
And then, I am exceedingly thankful for Leroy and his handyman skills, because if it had been just me by myself, I'm sure that it would have broken down somewhere between Cuba and Bloomfield, and I would have died. I would have no cell phone service, and I wouldn't have known how to fix it, and y'all would just, hear about it on the news later because
Right.
I had no idea what was happening.
Get an Uber from Navajo Lake to Albuquerque. But we were able to fix it and drive home on Monday, and I finally got to see all the landscape and stuff like that from the ride. We did have one little hiccup on the drive home where we ran into a rainstorm, and which the rain wasn't bad, but our new wheel well that I built, I didn't seal any of that up, so we got some water into the RV from the wheel well. But other than that, we were able to drive home I kept it around 55 miles an hour. Once I got closer into Albuquerque, I started pushing it to 60, 65, 70, and just to see how it would do, because at that point AAA would have towed us home. But so all in all, even though we had the horrible drive up and had to fix the RV at the campsite, we had a great time. The Jaramillos, good friends of ours, and being able just to hang out with them and be on the boat and
thankful for them for letting us borrow their tools and borrow their truck.
Right.
And taking care of our kids on Father's Day so that we could work on the RV. And just thankful that we have friends that are like family.
Right.
And just unquestioning give us whatever we need.
It was still a really fun, good drive, and or not drive, weekend trip to the lake. And so we got another one coming up, and hopefully
we'll be better prepared for this one.
Be better prepared. So with that, thanks for watching this video, and have a good one.